Thank you for joining us. While millions of people are celebrating this holiday, we are still witnessing an unusual time in history, to say the very least. One of the main messages of Passover is deliverance from despair and fulfillment of life. Its meaning throughout the ages is timeless, in the defeat of oppression and the gift of life restored. So I'll share excerpts of a previous Passover special we broadcast on PBS 40 years ago, sponsored by Life Extension. With science-based research and cooperation, we'll all persevere, and together we will all say L'chaim, to life.
Happy Passover. I'm Irving Lehrman, Rabbi of Temple Emmanuel of Greater Miami. It is a time of song and happiness and renewal. For 3,500 years, the festival of Passover has had a unique hold on our people, for it is both a reenactment of the bitter suffering of the ancient Israelites under the Pharaoh in Egypt, and a joyous celebration of man's eternal yearning for freedom. Passover, therefore, has universal significance. It is no wonder that its message inspired the young colonies in their struggle for independence during the American Revolution. And it's no wonder that the words, "Let my people go," which became the slogan and the battle cry of the Civil War, have echoed throughout the corridors of time to this very day. And today, when freedom is being trampled upon in so many dark corners of the earth, the message of Passover still remains one of the strongest challenges to oppressors and one of the greatest hopes for the oppressed. For the Jew, Passover has added significance, for it summons us to ensure the security of Israel. This tiny country, born out of the ashes of the Holocaust, is today the only enclave of freedom and democracy in a Middle East of slavery and strife. Millions of Arabs have sworn to destroy it. But as we conclude our Passover Seder with the traditional words, we reaffirm our faith and restate our ancient pledge: next year in Jerusalem.
To all the Jewish people around the world, I want to send you wishes for a happy Passover. That's strange, because this Passover is different from all other Passovers. I know that there's not a section of the globe that is not afflicted with the corona. And it requires us, all of us, to change our way of living, our way of life, and our way of celebrating even ancient holidays like Passover. This has got to be a first. Perhaps with the exception of the first Passover, because we were sitting ensconced in the homes in Egypt, and we hoped that the pestilence would pass over our homes. Well, this is exactly what we in Israel are doing today, and probably what many of you are doing in the diaspora. So I ask you first to abide by the directions that are given by your respective governments and health ministries. But equally, I want you to remember our shared destiny, that shared destiny that has enabled the Jewish people to overcome the greatest trials and tribulations since the beginning of time, or since the beginning of our recorded time. We've overcome so many challenges. We've reestablished our state, we've reestablished our independence, and we formed one of the great societies on earth, the State of Israel. That is your home and will always be your home. Please celebrate Passover with your close family, and please remember that we are holding our hearts for you every day, and especially this day. Thank you. Chag Sameach.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, שהחיינו וקיימנו והגיענו לזמן הזה.
Happy holiday. I'm Richard Peritz, and I'm pleased to welcome you to join us for our Passover Seder.
And we come now to one of the important prayers that is almost like an introduction to the telling of the Exodus from Egypt, the prayer Ha-Lachma Anya.
One of the messages of Passover is to remind us of the deliverance from oppression and bondage from the days of Moses throughout history and to this century too. The unspeakable suffering and persecution could never subdue the Jewish people's dedication to God and to their heritage. This people's continued existence and return to Israel have been strengthened throughout the years by the exodus from Egypt and an undying faith in God. The oppression and bondage of Egypt was repeated throughout the ages. It is said, "For many came to annihilate the Jewish people in each generation, but in each generation the Holy One, blessed be He, saves us from their hands." How incredibly sad it is that people continue to ignore the lessons of history, in spite of the terrible price humanity pays in every generation. Therefore, we remember and cry fervently, never again.
When Israel was in Egypt's land, let my people go. Oppressed so hard they could not stand, let my people go. Go down, Moses, way down in Egypt's land, tell old Pharaoh to let my people go. Thus spake the laudable Moses said, let my people go. If not, I'll smite your firstborn dead. Let my people go. Go down, Moses, way down in Egypt's land. Tell Lord Pharaoh to let my people go.
I'm that survivor. I'm that survivor who was confined in ghettos, who froze on a bone-chilling train, who was separated from his family, who watched his parents starve right in front of his eyes. I'm that survivor. I'm that survivor who shivered at night, praying and hoping for a way out. That survivor who escaped. That survivor who hid in the woods, in a church, in an attic. And I'm that survivor who fought for his homeland, who dreamed of a better future, who wished to live in peace. I'm that survivor. The 10% who left Auschwitz alive. I'm that survivor who didn't live for years, just survived. I'm that survivor. The one who fought to exist, who was liberated, who made it out. And I'm that survivor that didn't. All 6 million of them. And I remember. I'm that survivor who didn't give up on his home. I'm that survivor who built a new one. That survivor who made his own place. A place where it could never happen again. I'm that survivor who joined the army of mothers and fathers, sons and daughters, brothers and sisters. The army of the people who swore never again. I'm that survivor. I'm Chana. I'm Meir. I'm Yan. I'm Hadassah. I'm Abba. I'm Rivka. I'm Chaim. I'm that survivor, and I will never forget.
Coming up, we have a famous, most dedicated rabbi, teacher and community leader who's also met with the president in the White House. Rabbi Avraham Friedman will share his thoughts on Passover today, followed by Marc Goldman and this segment from Israel. With us now is Rabbi Avraham Friedman. Sir, it's always an honor and privilege to have you on the show.
thank you very, very much for the opportunity, Richard. You're always doing great work.
Thank you, sir. Please kindly share with our audience the significance of this historic holiday throughout generations.
Well, the significance of Passover is sort of monumental to us, first and foremost, because that is when we were established as a nation, charging us with the wonderful mission that God gave to us, which to be a light unto the nations and to inspire the world around us with the beautiful words of the Torah, of the Bible, which sheds so much light, especially in today's day and age, where unfortunately there's darkness, there's spiritual darkness, there's moral confusion. So even more so, the holiday of Passover and its message is so important.
I would say today is a rather unique time in history of special hardship, with families kind of separated due to the pandemic. What are your thoughts with regard to the way families can celebrate at this time?
So that's an excellent question, and in that vein, Passover is even more relevant because Passover is of course about the holiday of freedom. We were in a situation where, as the Talmud, the Midrash says, that even Egypt had its slave population in such tight control that the Talmud tells us that even one slave could not escape. Reminds us somewhat of the Nazi concentration camps, which were so well guarded. And nevertheless, miraculously, God took out an entire nation, an entire people, and set them at a course that would change history, which reminds us of the power, especially when we're in a time of a different type of enslavement that this pandemic brought upon us, and from various sort of circles. But Passover is such a strong reminder that we could break out of it. We could break out of that bondage. There's always a greater power that could do things beyond expectations. As quick as this pandemic came out of nowhere, without any we did not expect it. It just came. So how much more so we believe is the power of goodness within each one of us, the power of goodness that comes forth from above. So Passover is a very encouraging reminder that freedom and inner freedom is something that is very, very achievable. And of course, the holiday in itself gives us that power to achieve that.
And despite all the hardships, the Jewish people have survived for so very many hundreds of years. The flame of Jewish heritage continues to burn brightly. How do you see the future, sir?
In the past, you are 100% correct. I mean, in more recent history, I remember watching a film of a Passover celebration in the Warsaw Ghetto. While the ghetto was during this time, during Passover, there was a Jew by the name of Nachum Zemba, who was a leader, tremendous scholar, and he was able to, whoever was there, whether it was a bunker or some underground sewer where they would hide, he was able to ignore everything around him and just celebrate. He said to everybody, we got to celebrate the Seder. And he found a way to celebrate the Seder and uplift the spirits of those around him. This is stories that we hear, whether it's during the Holocaust, whether it's during the Spanish Inquisition, that we found a way to sort of block everything else out around us in the most horrific situation, environment, and so on, circumstances, and we were able to connect to that inner spirit of freedom, which, when you take that and you contrast it with what we're going through today, I mean, while it's very sad and difficult and so on, but there's no doubt that as we've persevered and we've overcome those hardships, we will definitely overcome these hardships, and the future is great. Much depends on our attitude. The future is bright.
Bezrat Hashem. Rabbi, thank you so very much.
Thank you for the honor and opportunity, and much blessing, and in all that you do, Richard, which you do phenomenal work in terms of spreading a positive message, and you should have a wonderful and uplifting and meaningful Passover.
Thank you, Rabbi. We'll do some more in the near future. Thank you, sir.
You're welcome.
With us again is Marc Goldman. Marc, it's such a pleasure to have you back on the show.
It's a pleasure to be back, Richard. I appreciate you having me. Thank you.
We just heard from Rabbi Friedman and the Prime Minister of Israel with their messages and thoughts on Passover. And I'd like to ask you what you think, what your feelings are with regard to Passover and its significance in this day and age.
Today, it is extraordinarily significant because Passover is what commemorates the delivery of the most significant message ever delivered to mankind, which has changed the world. And the Passover story is the story of that. Because think about this, in ancient history that we read about, in so many cultures, and bringing it up to, let's say, ancient Greece and ancient Rome, there was always the made-up gods, the many gods, and all kinds of different things took place. Some cultures said, oh, God requires sacrifice of children or of virgins or other barbaric activities and other gods. And in Greece and Rome, there were so many gods, you could always pick one to agree with whatever you wanted to do. So if I was in a position of power over you and I wanted to do something to you, then I'd say Zeus was mad at you too. And so he authorized me to do whatever it was I wanted to do. And the whole Passover story really reflects that, because here Moses goes to Pharaoh and he says, God said, let my people go worship me in the desert. And Pharaoh says, what God, who's God that you're talking about? What are you talking about? I have all these gods, I have whatever I want. And each time Moses came, and that was the conversation. And God each time showed by the 10 plagues, and then taking the people out and all the other things that took place, parting of the sea and the drowning of all the Egyptians. So he took what was the mightiest nation in the world and turned it into nothing, and just showed who really runs the world in detail. And then 50 days later comes to Mount Sinai and appears before millions of people with the 10 Commandments, which is the foundation of what we call civilization. Because only by acknowledging that there's one God and that there's right and there's wrong can civilized behavior take place. Otherwise, it'll be your opinion against my opinion against someone else's opinion, and whoever's stronger is going to get their way. And that's the many gods. Or why it's relevant today is because what we're dealing with is God or government. Because with God, we know there is one fixed set of rules without change, without anything. They're clear, they're moral, everyone knows. With government, whoever gets to lobby stronger or has control, the rules can change every single day. So God made a commandment, thou shalt not murder. Once upon a time in America, abortion was not permitted at all. And then step by step, oh, it was okay in the first few weeks. Now it's okay in the first few months. And today, now it's okay after a baby is born. You can't argue that then that's murder. That's crossing off a commandment. And therefore, we are going, that's what the other side is pushing. And that's why it is so relevant today for us to acknowledge there is one God and there's right and there's wrong. And when it comes to America in particular, the whole concept is one nation under God. And the founders were clear about where they got it and how many times they mentioned God in all of those founding documents and where those rights come from. And all of that is so relevant to the Passover experience and how the freedom came and all of that it took to get there. So, and And that's why the only statue in the entire part of where Congress meets in the chamber is the statue of Moses, the lawgiver, because that's where it all comes from. And that's the relevance of Passover today and every day.
Well, they haven't yet toppled that statue, have they?
Well, no, that's the one that is the foundation. As I say, if you really look at the founding documents of America and the whole concept of one nation under God, it's because there's an agreement on right and wrong. Otherwise, it's not the king that decides today what's right and tomorrow that'll be wrong. And all the things that we all know comes from government. I mean, we've seen it over and over and over. So, and that seems to be the battle that we're facing today.
Before we conclude, what positive message can you bring to our audience during this Passover at this time in history, with all that's going on with the economic crisis, the pandemic, yet hope?
Well, I think there's a lot of hope. I think there's a lot of people in America who are beginning to recognize the danger of allowing the government to be in charge instead of God being in charge, and are ready to really stand up and make sure that they vote and support candidates who will bring us back to the America. Because the fundamental question always becomes, what could the world look like without America as it's been? And unfortunately, freedom only exists in the world because of America. Therefore, if America is brought down, those who want to destroy freedom are the ones who would have the power. So we can't let that.
Well, these certainly are very unique, strange, troubling times in history, with the economic crisis, the pandemic and other. And what message of hope we can bring to the world is, of course, a big question, and we must be positive and hope for the very best. I want to thank you again for being with us, Marc.
No, it's my pleasure. Thank you again, and keep up the good work. Be well.
Life Extension magazine brings you new discoveries in health and anti-aging. Our science-based research and supplements are so advanced they're many years ahead of the medical mainstream, with quality control standards that exceed FDA mandates. Life Extension has covered groundbreaking medical research for more than 35 years. For your health and future, you deserve the best. Learn more at lifeextension.com.
This concludes our special program on Passover. I'm Richard Peritz. Thank you for being with us, and happy holidays.